If the Atlanta Braves can't turn things around quickly, could they actually be sellers at the trade deadline? And if they are, who would they sell? Would they sell a Marcell Ozuna or a Chris Sale? And with all the bullpen struggles, why has Craig Kimbrell still not gotten an opportunity? I'll answer those questions and many more on today's mailbag episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on social media at shorts.ball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X and Locked On Braves on Instagram. If you're new and watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, and leave me a comment down below. Tell a friend, tell a family member about the show here at Locked On Braves to help grow our community. You're listening on the audio version. You can help me out as well by leaving a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. It is our weekly mailbag episode. I got almost 30 questions to get to. Hopefully we'll be able to get to them all. Many of them very similar, having to do with AJ Smith-Shawver replacements, where's Craig Kimbrell, and if the Rays are sellers at the deadline, and who could they actually trade away. So a lot of questions, but a lot of them very similar to get to on today's mailbag episode. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in a bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Before we get into today's questions, a little bit of news update. AJ Smith-Shawver was moved to the 60-day IL. No other real update on exactly the extent of his injury, but the fact they moved him to the 60-day IL, signaling that it's probably going to be fairly significant. Dylan Dodd is recalled with that move to the 60-day IL. He was the 27th man yesterday, so they are able to actually now recall him. I talked about it on this morning's podcast, which, by the way, if you didn't give that a chance to give that a listen, please go back and do so. We talked a lot about the injuries, the 2 games against the Phillies, as well as the offense and what is their struggles in the last year and a half compared to 2021 to 2023. So please go give that a listen if you haven't already. But I said in that podcast that I thought they might try to keep Dylan Dodd around because the Red Sox have a couple of tough lefties that maybe they give Dylan Dodd a chance against. He looked really good in his outing on Thursday, getting out a tough lefty in Bryson Stott. So we'll see if Dodd gets some increased opportunities. Stuart Fairchild also goes on the IL. They option Michael Peterson back down to AAA, and they make room with the 60-day IL move for AJ Smith-Shawver, makes room for Jose Azocar. And if you were like me and had no clue that Jose Azocar was in the Brave system, you're not alone. Everybody was scrambling when this move was made to figure out how are they promoting a guy that's not even on their team. But turns out they actually did sign him to a minor league deal after the Mets let him go, and he is going to get an opportunity on the Braves bench. As for Azocar here, it's a very fast runner, had 30 stolen bases at AAA last year. He has, as a right-handed hitter, he has crushed lefties this year, over 1,000 OPS against lefties this season. However, that's in like 11 at-bats, so very small sample size. He's most likely just going to be here as a pinch runner, maybe a defensive replacement, but we'll see if he gets some opportunities against lefties. But again, I think he's most likely just here to fill in as a pinch runner, mostly like Stuart Fairchild was. So those are some of the news of the day. Michael Peterson option. Jose Azocar has been added to replace Stuart Fairchild. Dylan Dodd up right now to replace AJ Smith-Shawver, who will most likely get replaced. Either Dodd or somebody else will get replaced by Bryce Elder whenever you need him to make that start. So let's jump into the questions. Like I said, almost 30 to get to today. So a lot to cover. Phil TN says, we're getting ever closer to the time when we ask that dreaded question, are the Braves sellers? We're almost into June. Absolutely don't want to see Sale traded. He is invaluable beyond the mound. In your opinion, will the Braves be sellers? So just to answer the question, do I think the Braves will be sellers? I don't. And I get it. We're kind of caught up in the moment. We are 2 months into the season. We're still 2 months away from the trade deadline. So I do not think the Braves will be sellers. I think if they're anywhere close to 500, they're kind of just playing like they are now, and they're inconsistent and still just hanging around 500. I still think at that point, they're going to go for it. It might be a soft buy, or they may not buy at all. They may just stand pat, but I don't think they're going to be huge sellers. And as for Chris Sale, He would be the big chip. Let's say the Braves are, 10 games out of a playoff spot come the end of July, and they are sellers. Chris Sale could get you a lot on the open market or on the trade market. Wouldn't want to do it because, like I said, he's the heart and soul of the team. But what good does that do you if you're 10 games out of a playoff spot? It doesn't even have to be that far. I mean, 5 or over 5 games, I would say, out of a playoff spot, you probably need to be considering selling. So I'm not saying they wouldn't do it, and it would be painful if they did, but he could get the Braves back a pretty nice piece, whether that be a prospect or somebody to help them down the road at the big league level. Maybe somebody that's already, knocking on the big league's door. If not there, Chris Sale could get you a pretty nice piece in return. Next question from Joey Milby says, at what point are we going to make some serious changes in the pen? I'm ready for Uncle Jesse, Kimbrel, Dodd, Harris, Burkhalter, etc. Just someone else to try and help us finish out the last third of the game. Lara had a couple of really rough outings, but he's even been better. Be careful what you wish for there in that. And I get it. It's frustrating. It's just, Burkhalter, like I said, I think his cutter, it's good enough. He could get out to the big league level right now if the Braves wanted to make that transition. I just don't think they're ready to do that. Hayden Harris, has good stuff. He's had good results, but for whatever reason, they haven't given him an opportunity. But you're also, in terms of those guys or a young Carlos Lara, are you really going to push rookies that don't have a lot of experience at the big league level into high leverage 7th, 8th inning spots and really trust them? I don't know that it's going to be much better than the results that you're getting right now. Jesse Chavez, we've kind of been there, done that. Dylan Dodd is one, I think, at least against lefties, could have a role in this bullpen throughout the season. And Kimbrel, still kind of the wild card. We got more questions about him, so I'll save my answers for those later. Another one from Joey says, I know they are mostly random, but is there anything in your opinion the Braves could do to keep our players more healthy? Is this just AA's willingness to take guys with injury risk, just bad luck? I really only watch Atlanta, but is there any other team going through this? So I think the Dodgers have 14 pitchers on the injured list right now. It is not just the Braves. It is an epidemic all around Major League Baseball. We've talked about it a lot here on the podcast. It's not a matter of if, it's just when a pitcher is going to get hurt. And pitchers are throwing harder than ever. They're putting more spin on the ball more than ever, which is putting more stress on their elbows than ever before. And it's leading to more injuries. It is what it is. And it's not like pitchers are going to back off not throwing as hard or not throwing, putting as much spin on the breaking ball. That's what gets them to the big league levels. And that's what helps them be so successful. It's just the state of the game as it is. And there's really not much you can do about it. Goldie, I've been saying for over a year, this coaching staff isn't the right one to get the most out of this team. The attention to detail, the little things, the accountability, the intensity are just not there from the staff down. After the AJ Smith-Shawver Strider situation, where do you stand? Again, I mentioned this briefly on this morning's episode, but I think that situation's a bit overblown. It is a bit frustrating that a player had to go say something. It's also hard for me in the videos that I've seen to see the timing in all of that and how it all went down and took place. It's also a thing where the player saying he's fine, AJ Smith-Shawver saying he's fine, the coach is taking him at his word, and it's a player, that's noted, and a player that's been out there and has probably tried to push through that before and realize you don't need to do that. And it's that player, recognizing the situation that the player is actually in and relaying that to the coaches. Again, I think that's a situation that's just been blown up over social media, and it's not that big of a deal. However, as somebody who's been a big supporter of Brian Snitker, felt like he was asleep at the wheel last year. He's not that coach that when things aren't going right, that he's going to fire you up to get things going in the right direction. It's a coach that everything's going right. Nobody's injured. You ride in the lineup each and every day. Your moves are simple. You keep everything steady Eddie, business-like. That's what Brian Snitker has been great at. But when there's turbulence, you need somebody to get you going. He's not that guy. And that's what this team has needed the last year and a half. They needed some fire and some intensity and just overall managerial decisions this year. There have been some bigger questions than what I have seen in the past from Brian Snitker. And maybe it's just because we're hyper focused and they played so many close games. And in those close games, you're going to overanalyze every bad decision that is made. But it just feels like almost a daily basis he's making a decision that almost everybody universally agrees is a bad decision. So again, as somebody that's been a big Brian Snitker supporter, it does seem like he's taken a step back this year. And I predicted a while back that this was going to be his last year. And if things continue to go in this direction, it feels like that's going to be the case. All right. I did not cover enough questions in that first segment. We got a lot more to get to, some more on Craig Kimbrell, some more on the Braves as sellers and who they should sell. We'll get into all that here next. Whether you're gearing up for back-to-back meetings, shuttling kids back and forth to activities, or tackling an endless to-do list, your morning sets the tone for it all. That's why it should start with the perfect cup of coffee, crafted just for you by Trade. Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the U.S., delivering fresh, incredible coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Whether you're a cold brew fan or a pour-over purist, they've got a roast you'll love. And if the first match isn't perfect, Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right. I love that their prices are comparable to grocery store brands, but the flavor is on a whole other level. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our customers 50% off your 1-month trial at drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. That's TRADE.com/lockedonmlb for 50% off your 1-month trial. That's 50% off your 1-month trial at drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. Let's jump right back into the questions because we got a ton still to get to. Another one from Joey Milby who says, assuming Elder comes up to replace AJ Smith-Shawver, is it realistic to think he can be as good as his last few MLB starts? So I think it's unrealistic to believe that Bryce Elder can go out and consistently throw a quality start. I think, as I've said for a while, the expectation for him should be 5 innings, 3 earned, 6 innings, 4 earned. And if he can do that for you, you take it all day long. He's capable of going out there and giving you quality starts, as we've seen, and getting on a roll. But the margin of error for him is just so thin. Everything has to be working right. I do think there's maybe something he figured out last time. He was just focusing more on the sinker, slider, kind of ditching those other pitches, and it seemed to be effective for him. But again, I think the expectations for Bryce Elder are that he's a borderline 5th starter that can go out there and hopefully give you 5 innings, 3 earned, 6 innings, 4 earned, just keep your team in the game and give you some innings. And that's what you should expect. Emmanuel, how long a leash do the Braves have left before having to consider selling some of their pieces, maybe expiring contracts like Ozuna, Iggy, in order to prepare the team for 2026 and beyond? So as far as how long of a leash before the Braves decide that, I kind of touched on it earlier, but again, we're really 2 months away from having a serious discussion about this. But you get to the All-Star break and you're, more than 5 games back, then I think we really start having a discussion. And then obviously you get to the end of July and you're more than 5 games back of a playoff spot in general. We're not even talking about the division. We're just talking about a wild card spot. That's when I think you have a serious discussion about whether or not the Braves should be sellers. And I do think if that were to be the case, I think you absolutely look to trade an Ozuna. I think you absolutely look to trade an Iglesias. And I think you even consider moving a Chris Sale. So again, I'm not there yet, and I probably won't be there for a while. But I think after the All-Star break is when that discussion really needs to take place. And for me, it's, are you more than 5 games out is kind of that cutoff line for me to say, are you buyers or are you sellers? And like I said, you could do it one of 2 ways. You could certainly just stand pat, hope that things work out for you. You could do a soft buy, or maybe you just get a couple of cheap pieces and see if that turns things around. You can do a soft sell. But I think in that scenario, you absolutely look to trade in Ozuna and Iglesias, some expiring contracts, guys that you're probably not going to bring back anyway. Kane Suttles, do you think AA makes any credible moves this year at the deadline? Also, who do we bring up to replace the speed off the bench of Fairchild and Allen? We already got the answer to the second question there, and Azakar that the Braves just acquired. Do I think AA makes any credible moves? depends on what you mean by credible, because AA's never made the big splash moves at the deadlines. It's more of, let's make a bunch of smaller-ish moves and hope that they pan out. I'd say the only time he really made some big moves was, I believe, the 2019 deadline, where he had to remake the bullpen, and he went out and got a Mark Melancon, a Chris Martin, a Shane Green. I thought, those were probably the biggest deadline moves he made. Everybody will talk about the 2021 deadline, but those were just getting has-beens and hoping that things worked out. And fortunately, it did for the Braves. So he's not really a guy. He's not going to go out and get the best reliever on the trade market. He's not going to get the best starting pitcher. Same thing as free agency. He's not shopping at the top of the food chain, whatever you want to say there. So I don't know that there's going to be any big moves. I think he'll make some moves, some necessary moves. I think he'll get an arm for the rotation. I think he'll get an arm for the bullpen, assuming the Braves are, like we just talked about, in contention at the deadline. Colin Moses, do you feel the offense is finally turning things around, or was it a byproduct of playing 2 games in one day, so you stay in more of a rhythm? I mean, it's hard for me to really get on board after just 2 games. It was two very impressive games for the offense, I thought, on Thursday, but it came on the hills of a game, not Hill, of a game on Tuesday where the offense was putrid. You couldn't score anything. Now, they did have runners on base in 8 of those 9 innings, so you could at least point to that, but not able to do anything with it. And then game 1 on Thursday, you had plenty of base runners, still not able to come through enough to win the game. Like I said, that game was on the bullpen, in my opinion. And then in the nightcap, you put it all together and you have that big game. But can you do it consistently? Can this offense have a game where you fall behind 2-3 runs early and you just don't feel like it's over? Can they get on a run where they're consistently scoring 3, 4, 5, 6 runs a game? Again, I don't think we're asking for much, but can you consistently have a stretch where you're easily putting up 3, 4 runs a game and giving yourself a chance to win? And again, I'm not ready to say that this offense has fully turned a corner just based off what we saw Thursday, but I do think it was a step in the right direction. Wriggler 2, Iggy's given up at least 1 earned in 50% of his appearances, including 6 of the last 8. How much longer is he designated as a closer? Time for Kimbrel to replace him. Kimbrel's not the answer at closer. He just doesn't have that velocity anymore. If they thought he was able to be the closer, we would have already seen him at the big league level in some sort of capacity. So I don't think Kimbrel is the answer. And I don't know who the answer is. Daysbel was the only one that really felt like he could overtake him as the closer. And now he has had a step back, and the command issues are really a problem right now. And he hasn't really had the strikeout rate that you would expect from him and what you would expect for him if he's going to be that closer. So you're looking at a Dylan Lee, he's had some trouble giving up some home runs here lately, or a Pierce Johnson, who gave up a big home run on Thursday. So the options aren't great. You really are just hoping that Iglesias figures it out, that maybe if they cut down on that slider and he just focuses more on the sinker and the changeup, that he can still be a very effective pitcher. I don't put too much stock into what happened on Thursday. You coming in a blowout game, it's not that same adrenaline. But again, there's just not many other options, and Kimbrel is not one of them, at least for a closer. Keith Miller, with the most recent injury to AJ Smith-Shawver, should the Braves look at a pitcher who could possibly be cheaper to buy but having a bad year, like Sandy Alcantara, Brandon Woodruff, or a Mitch Keller? I don't think the Marlins will be pretty dumb, and they are a dumb organization to trade Sandy Alcantara right now when his stock is just so low. Brandon Woodruff, I need to at least see something from him first. Mitch Keller would be a pretty solid one to go after. There's some others out there, and Andrew Heaney comes to mind. So I think there are several injury replacements, and I think the Braves will go out and do something small between now and, say, the All-Star break to get some starting pitching depth. I don't think it will be anything major. But I think, obviously you get to the trade deadline. This is a major injury for AJ Smith-Shawver. I think you have to go out and get something substantial for the rotation. Mac McGuire, what was the deal with Strider going over? Why weren't the coaches paying attention? Is it a big of a deal as Braves Twitter is making it? I don't think it's as big of a deal as Braves Twitter is making it, in my opinion. I think it's a pitcher who, again, has probably been in that situation recently, has tried to push through things himself, and he sees a young guy out there that is trying to push through and doesn't need to, and he's just going over and telling the coaches, hey, look, I know he wants to get through it. You need to go get him. And I think that's just all that it was. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. Again, I think it was just a case of a pitcher who's been through it himself recently, a guy who's tried to push through it and saw AJ Smith-Shawver having some of those same signs and helped out and told the coaching staff. That's all I think it is. Owen Ray, how do I donate my UCL to AJ Smith-Shawver? Serious answers only. So, you go to a clinic, go to your nearest doc in the box and tell them that you want your UCL taken out and have it mailed to AJ Smith-Shawver, and that's how you get it done. Caden Hurd, when do we see the Braves make a legitimate move that isn't a bottom feeder kind of move? With the injury to AJ Smith-Shawver, is there a trade in our future, and what's going on with Craig Kimbrell? So several questions like this asking, where is Kimbrell? Why have they not given him a chance? I don't know. He's been fine. The velocity is good as it's going to get. It's not going to get back to where it was before at 97. It is what it is at this point, and that's why I don't think he's an answer at closer, but I'm surprised they haven't given him a chance. I think it's just a matter of creating depth. They are paying Rafael Montero at least something significant, and so I don't think they want to let go of that just yet, but I think he is the guy to go, and maybe they feel like Kimbrell's not that much of an upgrade over Rafael Montero. Again, I know the results have been good at AAA, but I haven't watched all those. I don't know if it's just a matter of he's, as a veteran that's being able to overpower AAA hitters or not. That only the coaches can really ask that, or people who are dialed in watching those outings. But I feel like if the coaching staff thought he was going to have a huge impact, if he could be a 7th, 8th inning setup guy, or even if they thought he could be a potential closer replacement, he would already be here. The fact that he's not just tells me that the coaching staff doesn't think he's ready. When will we see a legitimate move? Not till July. Teams just aren't making legitimate moves at this time. Like I said, you might see the Braves make a smaller size move for somebody just to give you some depth in the rotation, but I don't think you see any significant type of move until after the All-Star break. Justin Shoemake. So we lose Minter and Jimenez, 2 high leverage relievers, and neither one is replaced. We lose Fried and Lopez, and neither was replaced. Should we start questioning AA's decisions? Also, where is Kimbrell? Why hasn't he gotten a chance yet? So kind of already just talked about the Kimbrell situation, but should we start questioning AA's decisions? It's hard to do that not knowing for certain if his hands are tied financially. You talk to AA and he says it's not, and that they'll make moves to take them into the tax, but his actions are saying otherwise, and everything else is saying otherwise, that he is being hamstrung by the ownership to not spend unless it's just the absolutely right move, I guess. So again, it's hard to really fault AA if his hands are tied behind his back. All right, we got several more questions to get to on today's episode. I will try to get to all of them today, but thank you all so much for joining me on today's podcast. We'll get right back into the questions here next. Get supplies you need from the site that's made for the skilled trades at Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use our promo code SH5. You'll get 5% off your first order. That's promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order at supplyhouse.com. So I'll try to get through the rest of these questions as quickly as I can. Matt Cox, if it is worst case scenario for AJ, what are the chances we trade for a starter? I think you absolutely trade for a starter. In the short term, maybe you get somebody just to add some depth, but I think in the long term, you're going to have to find a legitimate starter through a trade. TS Studios, the bullpen is a big issue right now. How long will it be for them to call up Kimbrel and add some under the radar arms? So I'm surprised Kimbrel's not up already. And as I just talked about, that to me just tells me that the coaches that are watching him making those decisions, they don't feel like he's a significant upgrade over what they already have. I do think you have to go out and try to find some sort of arm in the bullpen pretty soon. I don't know that you can wait till the trade deadline on that one. Hayden Harris, would Josh Smith work at shortstop? I just like his speed contact profile. I think it's a stretch for Josh Smith to be a shortstop. And I'm somebody like the Braves. I very much value defense at shortstop. And just in my limited viewings, and they're very limited viewings of Josh Smith for the Rangers, I think it's a stretch for him to be an everyday shortstop. Can he handle the position? Sure, but I feel like it's a bit of a stretch for him to be a shortstop. And you look at his outs above average at shortstop this year, it's at a 0, -3 lateral movement. So again, not really much to go off of there. Last year is -1 outs above average. So again, I think he can hold it there and be fine, but almost anything would be a big downgrade defensively to what Nick Allen has given you. But Josh Smith certainly would give you a little bit more offensively. Sam Volin, hey, Jake, I know this has been drawn out, but how much do you think losing Freeman and replacing him with Olsen has truly hurt this lineup? Freddie is a higher average guy, which is needed on this team. Not sure if there's any data to pull to compare the two. Freddie Freeman is a clutch hitter. So again, anytime we have this discussion, you have to make sure you put the clarifying statement that Matt Olson's been the second best first baseman since that trade was made. It's just that Freddie Freeman has been the best first baseman and is a future Hall of Famer. And you're actually absolutely right, Sam. Having Freddie Freeman's type of bat is more of what this team needs. A bat that doesn't really slump, a bat that is more of an all-fields approach, but it is a bat that is less powerful. And the Braves, at the time making that trade, they were all about slug and all about power. The game has since changed since then, and it's become more about contact and speed. And you certainly would love to have a bat more like Freddie Freeman's at this point. I love Matt Olson. Give that clarifying statement. He has been a really good first baseman for the Atlanta Braves, but Freddie Freeman would be better. There is no doubt about that. Aaron Abston, there's been a lot of trade talks, but what are we willing to trade? I don't think we have good enough prospects to fill the gaps for our team, and I would be surprised if we move on from the people we paid. I know we have free agency, but what can we do to benefit us now? So I actually think the Braves are in a decent spot for trades with prospects because they do have a lot of starting pitchers that are close to the big leagues. You look at somebody like a Lucas Braun, you look at somebody like a Drew Hackenberg, even a Blake Burkhalter. The Braves have some arms that are coming up through the system, a J.R. Ritchie, that I think could get you back a decent return. Again, we're not talking about anything major. We don't even really know at this point who the top names are going to be. Maybe a Bo Bichette. I'm not talking about anything like that, but I think the Braves have some arms that are getting closer to the big league level. Teams are always looking for pitching that the Braves needed to make a medium-sized move that they have the prospects to be able to get that done. Benjamin Walters, Braves AAA roster is thin. Should the Braves look at taking a flyer on Hunter Renfroe? He just got released. I saw that too, and I don't know. I feel like Hunter Renfroe is probably just done at this point, and I think he's also not the type of player that the Braves need. It's more of an all-power type of approach. So I just don't think he really fits the need for what the Braves are looking for in their outfield right now. JJ, with Elder being the likely call-up, how hard do you think it is mentally constantly being sent down regardless of performance? 4 of his last 5, he went 6 innings with 3 earned or less. Bryce is 26. Do you think he wants to move to a team where his innings are more consistent? So I feel like as a player, yeah, you'd rather have some consistency instead of going back and forth, and you'd obviously rather be at the big league level. So I think if you put a lie detector test on Bryce Elder, he'd say, yeah, I'd rather just be at the big leagues and stay there. Or any team, whether that's with the Braves or somebody else, I think he'd rather just be at the big leagues and be able to stay there. But it is just part of the part of the game. And it's unfortunate for him that he has an option and the Braves are able to do that with him this year. But he's been through it a lot now. And so I think he'll be able to handle it better maybe than he did even earlier on in his career. So I think that part of it he'll be fine with. Brad Horn, what are your thoughts that the problem of the offense is Tim Hires? I know the hitters ultimately are responsible for their own at-bats, but it seems that Hires was the wrong guy for the job. It does feel like an overreaction, and it felt like an overreaction when it happened to fire Kevin Seitzer, who's now done a pretty good job with the Mariners after one bad year for the Braves. I don't think it's fair to blame things on Tim Hires at this point. You couldn't expect him to come in and change the mentality of a group that was built to do one thing and a group of players that was built to do one thing and to try to change their mentality to be something else in such a short amount of time. And we've seen some changes. We've seen the less aggressive approach. And if you can put it all together, then great. But he was given a roster that was built and a bunch of guys that were built to do one thing. And he's trying to change that mentality to make them more well-rounded players. And it was a hard task. It was always going to be a difficult task for him. Jacob Cole, I'm not saying that I think the Braves will be sellers at the deadline by any means, but if they would be, why would we even trade? The majority of the team is locked up long-term. I'm sure there are many teams that would take these contracts. So talking about Ozuna, I think he and Iggy definitely are gone. Pierce Johnson, I think, is another one that could be moved too. And then Chris Sale would be obviously the big fish if the Braves were to be sellers. Miller, even though the offense did good yesterday, do you think it's concerning how many times they miss easy to hit pitches? I'm just curious if it's a swing mechanic or they are just not seeing the ball out of the hand correctly. So part of this is just their swing mechanics, and that it's generally, especially early in the count, it is a swing for the fences approach. And when that happens, sometimes you're not fully in control of the barrel, and you can miss some easy pitches like that. You can also hit a lot of home runs like they've done in the past. So it's just kind of the give and take of the approach of the team. When you swing so hard all the time, you don't always have the best bat control with that, and it leads to you missing some easy pitches. Mike Brooks, leaving Craig Kimbrell down on the farm seems diminished at this point. What's your take on why he's still in Gwinnett? Again, my take is just the coaching staff feels like he's not that much of an upgrade. Otherwise, you're doing a disservice to this team. If they felt he could step in right now and be a setup guy and have an impact on the bullpen, he would be there. But you got to trust your coaches and trust what they're seeing. Again, I'm not watching every AAA game. I haven't seen all of his outings. I know the results are good, but do they believe the stuff is actually good enough to be anything better than what you already have in the bullpen? I know that's a low floor to clear, but clearly the coaches don't think that's the case, or he would be here already, because he's done enough results-wise at AAA to get the call if they felt like he could have an impact. And then last one here from Cats Buckeyes that just came in. Early thoughts on Acuna. I'm overall very encouraged, but seems there's a lot in the zone whip and the profile right now. He does seem to be doing a much better job of putting the ball in the air. I've been completely impressed with Acuna. Not playing for a year, he's come back. I mean, he doesn't start the game the other day. He comes in, he gets an RBI hit, he gets a double and scores. I mean, it's just, he looks fantastic to me. Homers in his first 2 games, already 4 extra base hits. So I've been very encouraged with what we've seen from Acuna and just think it's going to keep getting better and better. All right. Sorry, I ran through the end of those there, but I was able to get all the questions, almost 30 questions on today's episode. Thanks so much for joining me. Those who are here with me live, Laves, Sugar Brown, Reno Sand, Scott Bingham, Section 12. Hope you're all enjoying some NCAA regional baseball. Big weekend for the NCAA regional. So looking forward to that. BC in here as well, supporting his man, Freddy Freeman over there. Witty banter, Billy. Thank you all for joining me here on today's live episode. That will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit the thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. All that good stuff. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.